A 10-year-old girl ran into a hospital, drenched in rain and covered in blood, clutching a newborn baby. Before collapsing, she screamed 3 words that would change everything. Rain poured relentlessly as lightning illuminated the dark streets of a small town. A young girl sprinted barefoot through puddles, her tiny arms cradling something wrapped tightly in a torn blanket. Her face was streaked with tears, but determination burned fiercely in her eyes. She burst into the emergency room, gasping for breath, and screamed 3 words that left everyone frozen in shock. Those 3 simple words carried more weight than anyone could have imagined. This is not just a story. It's a glimpse into courage, sacrifice, and secrets buried too deep to stay hidden. If you're ready to uncover what those 3 words were and why they shook an entire community, then stay with us till the very end. You won't believe where this journey takes you. The nurse at the front desk barely had time to react before the girl collapsed onto the floor, clutching the bundle closer to her chest. The newborn let out a faint cry, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Panic spread like wildfire as doctors rushed forward, their faces etched with confusion. Who was this child? Why was she alone? And most importantly, what did those 3 words mean? As the medical team worked to stabilize the infant, one doctor knelt beside the girl, gently brushing wet strands of hair from her forehead. "What happened?" he asked softly, his voice trembling with urgency. But instead of answering, the girl stared blankly ahead, whispering under her breath. It was then that someone noticed the bloodstains on her clothes, blood that didn't belong to the baby. Who was injured? What had she witnessed? Every question led to another, unraveling threads of a story far darker than anyone expected. Little did they know, the truth lay not only in the girl's words but also in the choices made by those closest to her. Choices that would soon come crashing down upon them all. As the doctors worked feverishly to stabilize both the newborn and the mysterious girl, whispers began to ripple through the hospital corridors. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing with questions. Who was this child? Where had she come from? And why did she look so familiar to some of them? One older nurse, Margaret, froze mid-step as she stared at the girl lying unconscious on the stretcher. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the bed. "It can't be," she muttered under her breath, her voice barely audible over the chaos. She leaned closer, studying the girl's face intently. It was a face she hadn't seen in years, but one that haunted her memories nonetheless. Margaret turned sharply to the doctor leading the team. "Do you know who this is?" she asked, her tone urgent but hushed. The doctor shook his head, his brow furrowed in confusion. Margaret hesitated, then spoke again, choosing her words carefully. "Her name, it might be Emily. If it is, we need to tread lightly." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of Margaret's words sinking in. Before anyone could ask what she meant, a loud commotion erupted outside the ER doors. A man in his late 30s burst into the hallway, soaking wet and out of breath. His eyes darted wildly around the room until they landed on the stretcher holding the girl. He froze, his face pale with shock. "Emily," he shouted, rushing forward. Security guards quickly intercepted him, holding him back as he struggled against their grip. "That's my daughter. What happened to her? Where's Rachel?" His voice cracked on the last word, desperation spilling out like an open wound. The mention of Rachel sent another ripple through the staff. Margaret's expression hardened as she stepped toward the man. "You shouldn't be here," she said firmly, her voice low but laced with warning. "After everything you've done, how dare you show up now?" The man's eyes widened, panic flashing across his features. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just want to see my daughter and my wife." Wife. The word hung heavy in the air, unanswered yet charged with implication. No one corrected him. Instead, the doctor intervened, signaling for security to escort the man out. As he was dragged away, still shouting protests, the nurse leaned close to the doctor and whispered, "We need to find out where that baby came from. Because if Rachel really is involved, this isn't just a medical emergency. It's a tragedy waiting to explode." Meanwhile, the girl, Emily, stirred faintly on the stretcher. Her lips moved, forming soundless words. One of the nurses leaned in closer, straining to hear. Then her eyes widened, and she pulled back abruptly, clutching her chest as though struck by something unseen. Whatever Emily had murmured, it wasn't good. As dawn broke over the hospital, the staff gathered in hushed tones outside Emily's room. Margaret stood at the center of the group, her face grim as she recounted fragments of a story few had dared to speak of openly. "Rachel was Emily's mother," she began, her voice trembling slightly. She disappeared 5 years ago without a trace. Everyone assumed. Well, we all thought she was gone for good. The weight of her words settled heavily among the group. One nurse raised a hesitant hand. But if Rachel is really involved now, and that baby belongs to her, then where has she been all this time? And why bring a child here? No one had answers, but the implications were clear. Something, or someone, had forced Rachel back into their lives. The question was whether it had been by choice or coercion. Inside Emily's room, the young girl stirred again, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, disoriented but alert. A doctor approached cautiously, speaking gently. "Emily, can you tell us what happened? Who brought you here?" For a long moment, Emily said nothing, her gaze fixed on the ceiling as though searching for strength. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Mommy told me to run." The room fell silent. The doctor exchanged a glance with Margaret, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "What else did your mommy say, sweetheart?" the doctor asked, leaning closer. Emily hesitated, her small hands clutching the edge of the blanket. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered. She said, "Tell them I'm sorry." The phrase sent chills through everyone present. Apologies often carried regret. But whose regret? And for what? Before anyone could press further, Emily's expression shifted suddenly, her eyes widening in fear. "Is Daddy here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Margaret stepped forward, kneeling beside the bed. "Your daddy isn't allowed near you right now, sweetheart. He's very upset, but we're keeping you safe. Do you understand?" Emily nodded slowly, though her body tensed visibly. It was clear she feared her father, but why? What had he done to instill such terror in a child so young? Meanwhile, down the hall, the newborn remained under observation in the NICU. Nurses monitored its vitals closely, noting signs of neglect and malnutrition. Whoever had cared for this baby hadn't done so properly, or perhaps hadn't cared at all. As one nurse adjusted the infant's blankets, she noticed something tucked inside the torn fabric, a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Unfolding it carefully, she read the scrawled handwriting aloud to herself. "If you find this, please protect my children. They're innocent. Forgive me." The note bore no signature, but its message was chillingly clear. Someone, a mother, had gone to great lengths to ensure her children survived, even if it meant sacrificing herself. But who was this woman? Was it Rachel? Or was there another layer to this puzzle still hidden beneath the surface? Back in Emily's room, Margaret made a decision. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. When the line connected, she spoke in a low, urgent tone. "We have a situation. Rachel's kids are here, and they're in danger. You need to come now." Whoever was on the other end didn't argue. After a brief pause, they replied, "I'll be there within the hour." The hospital buzzed with quiet tension as the clock ticked closer to the promised hour. Margaret paced nervously outside Emily's room, glancing at her watch every few minutes. Whoever she had called clearly mattered. A lot. Finally, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, mid-40s, with sharp features softened only by the worry etched into her face. Her eyes scanned the corridor before landing on Margaret. "Where are they?" she demanded, her voice low but urgent. Margaret gestured toward Emily's room. "In there?" The girl woke up briefly. She mentioned Rachel. "And there's something else." She hesitated, then handed the woman the crumpled note found with the newborn. The woman's hands trembled as she read the words aloud under her breath. "Forgive me." She closed her eyes for a moment, visibly struggling to compose herself. When she opened them again, her expression was resolute. "This changes everything." "What do you mean?" Margaret asked, lowering her voice. "Do you know who wrote this? Is it really Rachel?" The woman nodded slowly. "It has to be. But if she left this note, it means she knew she wouldn't make it back. And whoever she's running from, they're still out there." Before Margaret could respond, the door to Emily's room creaked open, and a nurse stepped out. "She's asking for you," the nurse said quietly, nodding toward Margaret. Inside, Emily sat upright in bed, her small frame dwarfed by the oversized hospital gown. Her wide eyes locked onto the unfamiliar woman standing beside Margaret. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice tinged with both fear and curiosity. The woman approached cautiously, kneeling beside the bed. "My name is Claire. I'm an old friend of your mom's. Do you remember me?" Emily shook her head slowly, her gaze dropping to her lap. "Mommy doesn't have friends," she whispered. She says no one can be trusted. Claire exchanged a heavy glance with Margaret. Clearly, Rachel had been living in fear and teaching her daughter to do the same. Emily, Claire began gently, can you tell me what happened last night? Why did your mommy send you here? Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she clutched the blanket tighter. Bad men came to our house, she said, her voice barely audible. They shouted at Mommy. She told me to take the baby and run, but her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. But what, sweetheart? Claire pressed softly, placing a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. She stayed behind. Emily choked out between sobs. She told me not to look back, but I heard noises, loud noises. Claire's jaw tightened, her mind racing. Loud noises likely meant violence, and if Rachel had stayed behind to protect her children, the chances of her survival were slim. Still, hope flickered faintly in Claire's chest. Rachel was resourceful. Maybe, just maybe, she'd manage to escape. As Emily calmed slightly, Claire turned to Margaret. We need to find Rachel. Now, if those bad men are involved, she won't last long. Not unless we intervene. Margaret hesitated, her brow furrowed. And the father? What about him? Claire's expression darkened. That's the thing. I don't think he's the father, not biologically, anyway. Rachel confided in me once, about someone else. Someone dangerous. Before either of them could elaborate, a commotion erupted outside the room. A security guard rushed in, his face pale. There's a man downstairs demanding access to the girl and the baby. He claims he's family, but he's not alone. There are others with him. Claire's blood ran cold. How many? At least 3, the guard replied grimly. Claire stood abruptly, her mind racing. Whoever these men were, they weren't here to help. They wanted something or someone, and Emily and the newborn were squarely in their crosshairs. Turning to Margaret, she spoke in a firm, determined tone. Get Emily and the baby moved to a secure location. Now, and whatever you do, don't let those men inside. Claire moved quickly, her mind racing faster than her feet. She ushered Margaret and the nurse out of Emily's room, issuing rapid instructions. Take her through the service corridor. There's an underground parking garage 2 floors down. Wait there until I contact you. Margaret hesitated, her face pale. What about the baby? Should we move them separately? No, Claire replied sharply. Keep them together at all costs. If those men get hold of either one, they'll use them to find Rachel or worse. As Margaret hurried off with Emily, Claire turned to the security guard. How many exits does this hospital have? For main ones, the guard replied. Plus emergency stairwells on every floor. Claire nodded grimly. Seal off the east wing entirely. Redirect any staff or patients away from that area. And double the guards at the front entrance. I want eyes on anyone who comes within 10 feet of this building. The guard saluted and rushed off to carry out her orders. Alone for a moment, Claire pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. When the line connected, she spoke in a hushed but urgent tone. It's me. I need your help. Rachel's kids are in danger, and so is she. Meet me at St. Mary's Hospital. Bring backup. Before hanging up, she added one final detail, and bring the file. The one I gave you last time. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit service corridor, Margaret led Emily toward the underground parking garage. The young girl clung to her hand, her eyes darting nervously at every shadow. Are the bad men coming? She whispered, her voice trembling. I won't let them hurt you, Margaret promised, though her own fear betrayed her shaky tone. Behind them, the newborn slept soundly in a portable incubator, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around them. Back upstairs, Claire intercepted a frantic call from the front desk. They're here, the receptionist stammered. 3 men in suits. They say they're federal agents. But they're lying, Claire finished for her. Stall them. Tell them the children are being treated for a highly contagious disease. That should buy us some time. As Claire hung up, her thoughts drifted back to Rachel. Over the years, she'd pieced together fragments of her friend's story. A toxic marriage, a controlling husband, and finally, a desperate escape. But there was more to it than that. Rachel had confided in Claire once, late at night, when the weight of her secrets became too much to bear. He's not the father, Rachel had admitted, tears streaming down her face. The baby, he's someone else's. Someone powerful. Someone who would destroy my life if he ever found out. At the time, Claire had dismissed it as paranoia born of years of abuse. But now, standing in the middle of a crisis that seemed ripped from the pages of a thriller, she realized Rachel had been telling the truth. Every word. Claire's phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was the person she'd called earlier. "I'm 20 minutes out," the voice on the other end said. "What's the situation?" "They're closing in," Claire replied tersely. "If we don't move fast, they'll find the kids and Rachel might already be dead." There was a pause on the line, then a sigh. Rachel knew this day would come. She always said she was buying time, not just for herself, but for her children. Do whatever it takes to keep them safe. "I'll handle the rest." Claire ended the call and took a deep breath. Time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. As she made her way toward the parking garage, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. In the distance, the sound of raised voices echoed through the hospital halls. The federal agents were growing impatient, and their lies were starting to unravel. The hospital corridors felt like a labyrinth under siege. Claire moved swiftly, her mind calculating every possible escape route. She reached the underground parking garage just as Margaret and Emily arrived, the newborn still nestled securely in the portable incubator. Emily's wide eyes darted around the dimly lit space, searching for threats that only existed in her imagination for now. "We need to leave," Claire said urgently, scanning the area for any sign of pursuit. "This place won't stay safe for long." "But where do we go?" Margaret asked, clutching Emily's hand tightly. "They'll find us no matter where we hide." Claire hesitated, then pulled out her phone again. Typing furiously, she sent a message to her contact. "Send transport to the loading dock. Make it fast." As they waited, Emily tugged at Claire's sleeve. "Who are you really?" she asked, her voice trembling but insistent. "Why does everyone keep saying Mommy is in trouble?" Claire knelt beside her, forcing a reassuring smile despite the storm raging inside her. "Your mommy is very brave. She's been protecting you and your baby brother for a long time. Now it's my turn to help." Emily blinked back tears. Is she okay?" Before Claire could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed above them. Heavy boots descended the stairs leading to the parking garage, accompanied by muffled voices. The men were closing in. "Get behind me," Claire instructed sharply, pushing Emily and Margaret toward the far corner of the garage. "Don't make a sound." The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously in the cavernous space. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the top of the stairwell, a tall man in a dark suit, flanked by two others. His piercing gaze swept across the room until it landed on Claire. "There she is," he said, his voice cold and commanding. "Hand over the children, and no one gets hurt." Claire stood her ground, her expression unreadable. "You're not getting anywhere near them." The man smirked, taking a step forward. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. Those kids belong to someone who doesn't take kindly to interference. And Rachel belongs to herself," Claire shot back, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Whatever game you're playing, it ends here." The man's smirk faded, replaced by a look of barely contained rage. "Rachel made her choice when she ran. Now she'll pay the price, and so will anyone who tries to stop us." Before Claire could respond, headlights pierced the darkness as a black van screeched into the garage. The side door slid open, revealing an armed driver. "Get in," he shouted. Claire didn't hesitate. Grabbing Emily's hand, she ushered her and Margaret toward the van, the incubator trailing behind them. Gunfire erupted from above, ricocheting off the concrete walls as the men opened fire. Claire shoved Emily into the van, diving in after her just as the tires squealed and the vehicle sped away. Inside, Emily clung to Claire, sobbing uncontrollably. "What's happening? Why are they chasing us?" Claire wrapped an arm around her, her own heart pounding. "Because your mommy did something incredibly brave. She stood up to people who thought they owned her, and now we have to finish what she started." As the van raced through the city streets, Claire's phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was her contact again. "We've got a problem," the voice on the other end said grimly. Rachel didn't just run from her husband or some random powerful guy. She stole evidence. Evidence that could take down an entire organization. That's why they're after the kids. They think she gave it to them. Claire's stomach sank. "Does she still have it?" "No," the voice replied. "But if the kids know where it is, even subconsciously, it's enough to make them targets." Claire glanced at Emily, whose tear-streaked face was etched with confusion and fear. Whatever secrets Rachel had entrusted to her daughter, they were bigger than any of them realized. And now, it was up to Claire to ensure those secrets stayed hidden at any cost. The black van sped through the rain-soaked streets, its tires splashing through puddles as the city blurred past in streaks of neon light. Inside, tension hung thick in the air. Emily sat huddled in the corner, clutching the edge of the incubator that held her baby brother. Her small frame trembled. The whether from fear or exhaustion was unclear. Claire leaned forward, addressing the driver. How much time do we have before they catch up? The driver glanced at the rearview mirror, his jaw tight. Not long. They'll track us eventually. Whoever these guys are, they're professionals. Claire nodded grimly. Turning to Margaret, she whispered, we need to figure out what Rachel left behind. If the kids know something even unconsciously, it could save all our lives. Margaret hesitated, glancing at Emily. How do we even start? She's just a child. A scared child, Claire corrected softly. But also a smart one. Rachel wouldn't have trusted her with nothing. We just need to help her remember. Emily looked up suddenly, her tear-filled eyes meeting Claire's. I don't remember anything, she said quietly, almost defensively. Mommy never told me secrets. Maybe not with words, Claire replied gently. Sometimes secrets hide in places we least expect, in songs, pictures, or even dreams. Did your mommy ever sing to you? Or give you something special to keep safe? Emily frowned, concentrating hard. After a moment, she shook her head. Just a song. She sang it when I couldn't sleep. What kind of song? Claire pressed, leaning closer. It didn't have words, Emily murmured. Just humming. But sometimes, she'd say numbers. Claire exchanged a sharp glance with Margaret. Numbers could mean anything. A code, coordinates, a safe combination. Whatever it was, it might be the key to finding Rachel and staying alive. Can you remember the numbers? Claire asked carefully, trying to mask the urgency in her voice. Emily closed her eyes, her brow furrowing in concentration. 159. She paused, frustration flickering across her face. That's all I can remember. 159, Claire repeated under her breath, committing the sequence to memory. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Before she could pursue the matter further, the van swerved sharply, throwing everyone off balance. The driver cursed under his breath as he narrowly avoided colliding with another vehicle. We've got company, he growled, nodding toward the rear window. Sure enough, two cars had appeared in the distance, their headlights cutting through the rain like predatory eyes. They were gaining ground fast. Claire's phone buzzed again. It was her contact. There's a safe house 20 minutes east of your location. Get there ASAP, but don't trust anyone except me. And whatever you do, don't let those men get close to the kids. We're working on it, Claire replied tersely before hanging up. To the driver, she said, take us to the address I just received. Use every trick you know. We can't let them follow us. As the van careened through side streets and alleys, Claire turned her attention back to Emily. Sweetheart, think hard. Did your mommy ever take you somewhere special? Somewhere only the two of you went? Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. A park. With swings. But her voice trailed off, uncertainty clouding her features. But what? Claire encouraged. There was a box, Emily whispered. Under the slide. Mommy said it was for emergencies. Claire's heart skipped a beat. A hidden box could hold the answers they desperately needed, or worse, lead the pursuers straight to them. Either way, it was a risk they couldn't ignore. Do you know which park? Claire asked urgently. Emily nodded again. Greenfield Park. Near the big fountain. Claire exhaled sharply. Greenfield Park was miles away, and they were running out of time. Still, it was their best shot. Suddenly, the van lurched violently as one of the pursuing cars rammed into its rear bumper. Emily screamed, clinging to the incubator as Margaret pulled her close. Hold on, the driver shouted, weaving recklessly through traffic. He yanked the wheel hard, sending the van skidding onto a narrow side street. Behind them, one of the cars fishtailed wildly, temporarily losing control. Claire seized the opportunity. Take the next right, she instructed the driver. We need to lose them now. The van screeched around the corner, disappearing into the labyrinth of alleyways. For a brief moment, the pursuing cars vanished from sight. But Claire knew better than to relax. They weren't safe, not yet. Not until they reached the safe house. And even then, the real battle would only just begin. The van skidded to a halt in front of an unassuming brick building tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the tension inside the vehicle remained suffocating. Claire stepped out first, scanning the area for any signs of pursuit. Satisfied, for now, that they were alone, she motioned for Margaret and the driver to bring Emily and the newborn inside. This is it? Margaret asked skeptically, eyeing the dilapidated structure. It doesn't exactly scream safe haven. It doesn't need to look safe, Claire replied curtly. Just secure. Inside, the safe house was sparsely furnished, but functional, a few chairs, a table, and a cot in the corner. A man stood near the window, his silhouette outlined by the dim light filtering through the blinds. He turned as they entered, revealing a face weathered by years of hard decisions. "You're late," he said gruffly, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Emily and the baby. "Who else knows about this place?" "No one," Claire assured him, though her tone betrayed a flicker of unease. "We lost our tail before we got here." The man nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced. "You'd better hope so. If those men find us—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Claire ignored his skepticism and turned to Emily. "Sweetheart, do you remember anything else about the park? Anything your mommy might have said about the box?" Emily hesitated, her tiny hands clutching the edge of the incubator. She said it was for me and my brother, in case something happened to her. Her voice trembled as fresh tears welled up in her eyes. "I thought she meant if she died." Margaret knelt beside her, wrapping a comforting arm around her shoulders. "Your mommy loves you very much," she said softly. "That's why she made sure you were safe." Claire exchanged a glance with the man by the window. Whatever Rachel had hidden in that box, it wasn't just for emergencies, it was insurance. And now, it was their only lead. "Greenfield Park," Claire murmured, pacing the room. "If we can get there before sunrise, we might stand a chance." The man shook his head firmly. "Too risky. They'll be watching every exit, every route. You step foot outside, and they'll pick you off like flies. We don't have a choice." Claire snapped, her frustration boiling over. "If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. At least on the move, we have a shot." Before the argument could escalate further, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly from outside. Everyone froze, their eyes darting toward the door. "They found us," the driver whispered, reaching for the gun holstered at his side. Claire cursed under her breath. "How did they track us?" The man by the window smirked bitterly. "Because someone tipped them off." His gaze shifted pointedly to Margaret, who recoiled as though struck. "What are you talking about?" Margaret stammered, her face pale. "I would never save it," the man interrupted coldly. "Your phone signal led them straight here. Did you think they wouldn't notice?" Margaret's hands flew to her pockets, fumbling for her phone. Sure enough, the screen lit up with an incoming call from an unknown number. "I swear I didn't know," Margaret pleaded, panic rising in her voice. "I thought it was safe." Claire grabbed the phone and crushed it under her heel. "Whether you meant to or not, you've put us all in danger. Now we need to fix this fast." Outside, the footsteps grew louder, accompanied by hushed voices. Time was running out. Claire turned to the group, her expression resolute. "Here's the plan. 2 of us create a diversion while the others take Emily and the baby out the back way. We'll meet at Greenfield Park. No exceptions." "And what if they catch us?" the driver asked grimly. "They won't," Claire replied, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. "Because I'm going with Emily. She's our best chance at finding Rachel and stopping whoever's behind this." As the group prepared to split up, Emily tugged at Claire's sleeve. "What if Mommy isn't there?" she asked, her voice trembling. Claire knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll make sure she's proud of what we've done to protect you. Together, we'll finish what she started." With that, the group moved into position, bracing themselves for the fight ahead. But as Claire glanced at Margaret one last time, she couldn't shake the feeling that betrayal wasn't the only thing lurking in the shadows. The safe house erupted into chaos as Claire and the driver sprang into action, creating a diversion to draw the pursuers away from Emily and the newborn. Claire grabbed a fire extinguisher and smashed it against a window, the sound shattering the tense silence like a gunshot. "They're here," she shouted loud enough for the men outside to hear. "Go now, while they're distracted." Margaret didn't hesitate this time, clutching Emily's hand tightly as she led her toward the back exit. The newborn's incubator rattled slightly as they hurried through the narrow hallway, their footsteps muffled by the cacophony of breaking glass and shouting voices. Outside, Claire and the driver emerged from the front door, sprinting in opposite directions to split the pursuers' attention. Gunfire erupted almost immediately, bullets whizzing past Claire as she ducked behind a parked car. She glanced over her shoulder, ensuring Margaret and Emily were out of sight before diving deeper into the maze of alleys. Meanwhile, Emily stumbled along beside Margaret, her small legs struggling to keep up. Her mind raced with questions, each one more terrifying than the last. What if the bad men caught them? What if Mommy really was gone forever? And what was waiting for them at the park? "Keep moving," Margaret urged, her voice trembling but firm. "We're almost there." As they reached the edge of the neighborhood, the distant wail of sirens filled the air. Whether it was Claire's doing or a stroke of luck, the noise provided cover as they slipped into the shadows of a nearby playground. Greenfield Park loomed ahead, its towering fountain glinting faintly in the moonlight. Emily froze for a moment, staring at the familiar slide where her mother had once whispered secrets. "There," she said softly, pointing toward the structure. Margaret nodded, scanning the area for any sign of danger. "Stay close to me." Together, they approached the slide, its metal surface cold and slick with rain. Emily knelt at its base, her hands trembling as she dug into the damp earth beneath it. After a few moments, her fingers brushed against something hard, a metal box, rusted but intact. "It's here," she exclaimed, pulling it free. Margaret snatched the box and opened it hastily, revealing a jumble of items inside: a folded piece of paper, a USB drive, and a small keychain bearing the logo of a bank. "What does it mean?" Margaret asked, holding up the USB drive. Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy never told me. She just said it was important." Before either of them could process the contents further, headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the playground. A black SUV screeched to a halt mere feet away, and three men stepped out, their faces obscured by masks. "You shouldn't have come here," one of them growled, advancing slowly. Margaret pulled Emily behind her, shielding her with her body. "Run," she hissed urgently. But Emily didn't move. Instead, she clutched the box tightly, her eyes narrowing with a resolve far beyond her years. "You won't take it," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The leader paused, clearly taken aback by the child's defiance. Then he smirked, raising his weapon. Brave words for someone so small. Before he could act, a figure darted out from the shadows, a woman wielding a crowbar. With a swift swing, she knocked the gun from his hand, sending it skittering across the ground. "Leave them alone," Claire shouted, stepping between the men and the children. The attackers hesitated, momentarily stunned by her sudden appearance. But their shock quickly turned to rage as reinforcements arrived, surrounding the group. Claire glanced at Emily, her expression fierce yet tender. "Remember those numbers your mommy taught you?" she whispered. "Now's the time to use them." Emily blinked, realization dawning on her face. Clutching the box, she muttered the sequence under her breath: 159. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the men closed in, Claire lunged forward, buying precious seconds for Emily to decipher Rachel's final clue and unlock the truth that could save them all. The playground was eerily silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and the distant hum of the fountain. Claire stood between the attackers and Emily, her crowbar raised defiantly despite the odds. But her eyes flickered toward Emily, silently urging her to act quickly. Emily clutched the box tightly, her mind racing. The numbers, 159, echoed in her head like a mantra. She glanced at the items inside: the USB drive, the folded paper, and the keychain with its bank logo. Something about the combination clicked. "It's a locker number," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. Claire didn't take her eyes off the men, but her lips curved into a faint smile. "Good girl. Now tell me, where?" "The bank downtown," Emily replied, clutching the keychain. "Mommy used to take me there sometimes. She said it was important." One of the attackers laughed coldly. "Even if you figure it out, you'll never make it out alive." Claire tightened her grip on the crowbar. "We'll see about that." Before anyone could react, Margaret stepped forward, surprising everyone, including herself. "You want the box?" she shouted, holding it aloft. "Come and get it." Without waiting for a response, she hurled the box toward the fountain, sending it splashing into the shallow pool of water. The attackers hesitated, momentarily distracted by the unexpected move. "Go," Claire barked, seizing the opportunity. Margaret grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the SUV parked nearby. Claire followed closely, fending off one of the men who lunged at them. With a swift swing of the crowbar, she sent him sprawling to the ground. Reaching the vehicle, Margaret shoved Emily into the back seat while Claire jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life just as the remaining attackers recovered and opened fire. Bullets pinged against the SUV's frame, shattering windows and denting metal. "Hold on," Claire yelled, slamming the accelerator. The SUV tore through the park gates, fishtailing onto the main road. Behind them, the black SUV screeched after them, closing the gap rapidly. Inside the vehicle, Emily clung to the keychain, her heart pounding. "What happens when we get to the bank?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the chaos. We find out what your mom left behind, Claire replied grimly, weaving through traffic with reckless precision. And pray it's enough to stop these guys once and for all. As they sped toward the city center, Claire's phone buzzed insistently. It was her contact again. She answered on speakerphone, keeping one hand firmly on the wheel. You're playing with fire, the voice on the other end warned. Those men work for someone who doesn't forgive mistakes. I'm aware, Claire shot back. But I also know Rachel gave us everything we need to take them down. Tell me, who owns the bank where the locker is located? There was a long pause before the contact replied. It's not just any bank. It's a front for their operations. If you go there, you're walking straight into their territory. So be it, Claire said firmly. If they think we're backing down, they don't know us or Rachel very well. The line went dead, leaving the car in tense silence. Emily stared at the keychain, her tiny fingers tracing the bank's logo. Whatever secrets lay inside that locker, they were worth dying for, and Rachel had trusted her daughter to protect them. When they arrived at the bank, the building loomed ominously against the night sky, its sleek glass facade reflecting the flashing lights of the pursuing SUVs. Claire parked haphazardly near the entrance, turning to face the others. Listen carefully, she said, her tone urgent. Once we're inside, stick together. Don't let anyone separate us. And Emily. She paused, looking directly at the young girl. Whatever happens, don't lose that keychain. Understand? Emily nodded, clutching it tightly. I won't. With that, they exited the vehicle, racing toward the bank's automatic doors. Inside, the lobby was eerily empty save for a lone security guard stationed at the desk. He looked up sharply as they burst in, his hand instinctively reaching for his radio. Stay calm, Claire instructed, raising her hand slightly. We're here for a safety deposit box. No trouble. The guard frowned, clearly suspicious. Do you have authorization? Before Claire could respond, Emily stepped forward, holding up the keychain. My mommy left this for me, she said softly, her voice carrying an innocence that disarmed even the most hardened hearts. The guard hesitated, glancing between the frightened child and the determined adults behind her. Finally, he sighed and gestured toward the elevators. Basement level 3. Follow me. As they descended into the bowels of the building, the tension grew palpable. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of Rachel's secrets pressed down on them all. When they reached the vault room, the guard unlocked the heavy door and motioned for them to enter. Locker 159, he said gruffly before stepping aside. Claire scanned the rows of lockers until she found the one marked with the corresponding number. Inserting the key, she turned it slowly, the mechanism clicking open with a soft snick. Inside was a single manila envelope. Claire pulled it out carefully, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside were documents, pages upon pages detailing illegal transactions, names of powerful individuals, and photographic evidence linking them to crimes too heinous to comprehend. This is it, Claire breathed, her voice filled with awe and dread. This is how we bring them down. But before they could celebrate, the sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. The pursuers had caught up, and this time, there was nowhere left to run. The footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously through the narrow corridor leading to the vault. Claire glanced at the envelope in her hands, then at Emily, who stood clutching the keychain like a lifeline. There was no time to think, only act. Stay behind me, Claire instructed firmly, stepping between Emily and the approaching threat. Margaret moved instinctively to shield the young girl as well, her earlier betrayal forgotten in the face of shared danger. The vault door creaked open, revealing 3 masked men armed with weapons. Their leader stepped forward, his cold eyes scanning the group before settling on the envelope in Claire's hand. Hand it over, he demanded, his voice devoid of emotion. And maybe we'll let the kid live. Claire's grip tightened on the envelope. She knew better than to trust him. You'll have to kill us first. The man smirked, raising his weapon. That can be arranged. Before he could pull the trigger, a deafening alarm blared through the building. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an eerie glow. The guard stationed outside had triggered the security system, a desperate gamble that bought them precious seconds. Now, Claire shouted, seizing the moment. She hurled the envelope toward the far corner of the vault, forcing the attackers to shift their attention. While they scrambled to retrieve it, Claire grabbed Emily's hand and bolted for the exit. Margaret followed closely, her heart pounding as bullets ricocheted off the walls around them. They raced down the hallway, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. Ahead, the elevator doors slid shut just as they reached them. Claire cursed under her breath and pointed toward the stairwell. Go, don't stop. Inside the stairwell, the group descended rapidly, their footsteps thundering against the concrete steps. Emily stumbled briefly but caught herself, driven by sheer adrenaline. By the time they burst into the lobby, chaos reigned. The alarm had drawn the attention of local law enforcement, whose sirens wailed in the distance. We need to split up, Claire said urgently, turning to Margaret. Take Emily and get out of here. Find somewhere safe and call my contact. Tell them what we've uncovered. What about you? Margaret asked, panic rising in her voice. I'll handle these guys, Claire replied grimly. Just go. Margaret hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. She grabbed Emily's hand and darted toward the rear exit, disappearing into the shadows. Left alone, Claire turned back toward the stairwell, her expression resolute. As the attackers emerged, she raised her crowbar once more, ready to fight. But before the first blow could land, a familiar figure stepped into view, a woman clad in tactical gear, her weapon trained on the assailants. Stand down, the woman ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. The attackers froze, clearly recognizing her authority. One of them muttered something under his breath before lowering his weapon reluctantly. Claire stared at the newcomer, stunned. Who are you? The cavalry, the woman replied with a faint smirk. Rachel sent me. As the attackers were subdued, the woman introduced herself as Agent Monroe, a former colleague of Rachel's from her days working undercover. She suspected this day would come, Monroe explained, handing Claire a secure device. Upload the evidence onto this. It'll broadcast directly to the authorities. Once they see those names, the entire operation collapses. Claire nodded, quickly transferring the files. But as the upload progressed, she noticed something strange. A hidden folder within the documents labeled for Emily. What's this? She asked, opening it cautiously. Inside was a video file. When Claire played it, Rachel's face appeared on screen, pale but determined. Emily, sweetheart, Rachel began, her voice trembling with emotion. If you're watching this, it means I couldn't keep you safe the way I wanted to. But please know, you're stronger than you realize. Everything I did for you and your brother. And now, it's your turn to carry the torch. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes as Rachel addressed her next. Claire, thank you for protecting them. Keep them safe, and remember, some fights are bigger than any one person. Trust Emily. She's capable of more than you know. The screen went black, leaving Claire speechless. Behind her, Agent Monroe placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. She believed in you, Monroe said softly. Don't let her down. Meanwhile, Margaret and Emily hid in an abandoned alleyway, catching their breath. Emily clutched the keychain tightly, her mind replaying her mother's final message. What happens now? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Margaret knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Now, we finish what your mommy started. Together. In the distance, the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a faint light over the city. For the first time in hours, hope flickered faintly in Emily's heart. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain. Her mother's courage lived on in her. The sun had fully risen now, casting golden light over the city skyline. But for Claire, Margaret, and Emily, there was no time to savor the calm after the storm. The evidence Rachel had risked everything to protect was now in the hands of the authorities, or so they thought. Agent Monroe stood beside Claire, monitoring the secure device as the files uploaded to a government server. This should do it, she said, her tone measured but tinged with caution. Once this hits the news, heads will roll. Claire nodded, though her expression remained grim. And then what? Whoever's behind this won't just sit back and watch their empire crumble. Monroe sighed, glancing at Emily, who sat quietly nearby, clutching the keychain. That's why we need to move fast. Once the dust settles, people will start asking questions, including those loyal to the organization. We can't stay in one place for too long. Before anyone could respond, Claire's phone buzzed urgently. It was her contact again. She answered on speakerphone, her brow furrowing as the voice on the other end spoke. They're on to us, the voice said tersely. Someone leaked the source of the intel, your location. You've got maybe an hour before they send cleanup crews. Claire cursed under her breath. How did they find out? Doesn't matter, the contact replied. What matters is that you disappear. Now, Monroe stepped forward, her jaw tightening. Not without a fight. If they know about us, then innocent lives are at risk, including hers. She gestured toward Emily. Claire turned to the young girl, kneeling to meet her eye level. Emily, sweetheart, your mommy trusted you to carry on her work. Are you ready to step up? Emily hesitated, her small hands trembling around the keychain. For a moment, fear clouded her features, but then she remembered her mother's words. You're stronger than you realize. Slowly, she nodded. I'll do it. For Mommy. Claire smiled faintly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Good. Because we're going to need all the strength you have, and more. With that, the group sprang into action. Monroe led them to a safe house deeper in the city, a nondescript apartment tucked above a bustling cafe. From there, they began piecing together Rachel's contingency plan, a series of encrypted emails and dead drops designed to expose additional layers of corruption. As Claire worked tirelessly to decrypt the files, Emily wandered to the window, staring out at the streets below. Her mind raced with thoughts of her mother, her baby brother sleeping soundly in the next room, and the weight of the responsibility thrust upon her. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted softly, tears welling up in her eyes. Margaret approached, kneeling beside her. Your mommy believed in you. And so do we. You don't have to figure it all out right now, just take it one step at a time. Emily wiped her tears, nodding slowly. Okay. One step at a time. Suddenly, Claire's laptop emitted a sharp beep. She leaned closer, scanning the screen intently. Got it, she murmured, her voice tinged with both triumph and dread. What is it? Monroe asked, moving to stand beside her. It's another list, Claire explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Names of officials involved in covering up the operation. If we release this, we dismantle the entire network, Monroe finished grimly. But releasing this means painting targets on our backs, for good. Claire glanced at Emily, who watched silently from the window. It's what Rachel wanted. What she sacrificed everything for. We owe it to her, and to Emily, to see it through. Monroe hesitated, then nodded. Then let's make sure it counts. As they prepared to broadcast the second wave of evidence, Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. Mommy always said secrets have power, but only when you use them wisely. Let's make sure hers changed the world. Claire exchanged a look with Monroe, pride mingling with sorrow in her eyes. All right, Emily, let's finish what your mom started. But as they finalized the upload, a shadow moved outside the apartment door. A faint click echoed through the hallway, the unmistakable sound of a lock being picked. They're here, Claire whispered, grabbing the crowbar once more. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. Claire motioned for everyone to move silently, her crowbar gripped tightly in one hand. Agent Monroe pulled out her weapon, positioning herself near the door. Emily clutched the keychain, her heart pounding as she crouched behind the couch with Margaret. The door creaked open slowly, revealing two figures silhouetted against the dim hallway light. Before they could step inside, Monroe fired a warning shot, the bullet embedding itself inches from their feet. Stay back, she barked, her voice cold and commanding. One of the intruders raised his hands, clearly unarmed, but the other reached for something tucked into his jacket. Claire didn't wait to see what it was. With a swift swing of the crowbar, she lunged forward, knocking the second figure off balance. A metallic object clattered to the floor, a flash drive. What's this? Claire demanded, snatching it up before either man could react. It's not yours, the first intruder growled, lowering his hand slightly. That data belongs to someone else. Monroe pressed her gun against his temple. Who sent you? Before he could answer, a third figure appeared in the doorway, someone none of them expected. It was Claire's contact, the person she'd trusted implicitly throughout this ordeal. Put the gun down, Agent Monroe, the contact said calmly, stepping into the room. Claire froze, her expression shifting from shock to betrayal. You're the leak. The contact smirked, pulling out a small device. I'm just following orders. Orders that ensure the survival of something much bigger than any of us. Emily watched in stunned silence as the pieces fell into place. This wasn't just about protecting powerful individuals. It was about preserving an entire system built on corruption and lies. And now, they were standing in its way. You don't have to do this, Claire pleaded, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Rachel gave her life to expose the truth. Are you really willing to throw yours away for people like them? The contact hesitated, glancing at the young girl clutching the keychain. For a brief moment, doubt flickered across their face, but then they hardened their resolve. It's not personal, just business. With that, they activated the device in their hand. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the secure laptop began to fry, its screen erupting in sparks. The evidence, the names, the transactions, everything Rachel had fought so hard to protect, was gone in an instant. "No," Claire shouted, lunging toward the laptop, but it was too late. The contact turned to leave, motioning for the others to follow. "You've got 20 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Use them wisely." As the figures disappeared into the hallway, Monroe lowered her weapon, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "We're dead," she muttered bitterly. "All of this for nothing." But Emily shook her head, stepping forward with tears streaming down her face. "No," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the despair. "Mommy didn't teach me to give up when things got hard. She taught me to keep fighting." Claire stared at her, pride swelling in her chest despite the dire circumstances. "What do you propose we do?" Emily held up the flash drive Claire had retrieved during the scuffle. "This is still here. Maybe it has something we can use." Monroe took the drive cautiously, inserting it into a backup tablet. As the files loaded, her eyes widened in disbelief. "It's a ledger. Every payment, every bribe, every illegal transaction tied to the operation. This isn't just evidence, it's proof." Claire exhaled sharply, relief washing over her. "Then let's finish what we started." As the group prepared to broadcast the contents of the flash drive, Emily stood by the window once more, staring out at the city below. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than you realize." For the first time since the nightmare began, Emily felt a spark of hope, not just for herself, but for everyone whose lives had been touched by the shadowy organization. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. Her mother's courage would live on, in her. The backup tablet hummed softly as Agent Monroe worked furiously to decrypt the ledger on the flash drive. Each file opened like Pandora's box, spilling secrets that implicated some of the most powerful figures in the city and beyond. "We don't have much time," Claire reminded her, glancing nervously at the apartment door. "Once they realize what we're doing, they'll storm this place." Monroe nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm uploading it to every major news outlet and whistleblower platform I can think of. Even if they shut one down, the others will pick it up." Emily watched silently from the corner, her small hands clutching the keychain so tightly her knuckles turned white. She thought about her mother, the late-night whispers, the songs without words, the numbers etched into her memory. All of it had led to this moment. "Mommy trusted me," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "She believed I could finish what she started." Claire knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you are, sweetheart. You're braver than anyone I've ever met." Margaret joined them, her voice trembling but resolute. "Your mommy didn't just leave clues, she left instructions. She knew exactly how strong you are." As the upload progressed, the sound of distant sirens pierced the air. Reinforcements were closing in. Claire turned to Monroe. "How much longer?" 30 seconds, Monroe replied tersely, her eyes glued to the screen. Claire grabbed the crowbar once more, positioning herself near the door. "Then we hold them off for 30 seconds. The first wave of attackers arrived moments later, pounding on the door with enough force to splinter the wood. Claire swung the crowbar with precision, taking down the first intruder who dared to enter. Margaret used furniture to barricade the doorway, buying precious time as the fight spilled into the apartment. Amid the chaos, Emily stood frozen, staring at the tablet. The progress bar crept closer to completion, 1%, 2%, 5%. "Please work," she murmured, tears streaming down her face. Finally, the upload reached 100%. A notification flashed on the screen. "Broadcast successful." Monroe exhaled sharply, relief washing over her features. "It's done. The world knows." But their victory was short-lived. The remaining attackers broke through the barricade, flooding the apartment with overwhelming numbers. Claire fought valiantly, but even she couldn't hold them all back. As the group was surrounded, Emily stepped forward, holding the keychain aloft like a symbol of defiance. "You won't win," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "The truth is out there now. My mommy made sure of it." For a moment, the attackers hesitated, unsure how to respond to the defiant child standing before them. Then, unexpectedly, someone shouted from the hallway. Fall back. We've been compromised. The attackers exchanged confused glances before retreating as quickly as they had come. Outside, the sound of police sirens grew louder, signaling the arrival of law enforcement alerted by the broadcast. As the dust settled, Claire pulled Emily into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her own face. You did it, sweetheart. Your mommy would be so proud. Emily clung to her, sobbing quietly. Do you think she knew that we'd make it this far? I know she did, Claire replied softly. She believed in you, and so do I. Monroe approached, her expression somber but hopeful. This isn't over. There will be investigations, trials, and consequences, but the hardest part is behind us. Thanks to Rachel, and to you. Emily nodded slowly, turning to look out the window once more. Below, reporters swarmed the streets, broadcasting the shocking revelations to millions. For the first time, justice felt within reach. But as Emily held the keychain close, she couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Her mother was gone, but her courage lived on. And with it, the promise of a brighter future. Weeks passed in a blur of headlines, courtrooms, and investigations. The names exposed by Rachel's ledger dominated every news cycle, toppling careers and dismantling an empire built on corruption. Arrests were made, assets seized, and lives forever changed. But for Emily, the victory felt hollow without her mother there to share it. Claire stayed by her side through it all, helping her navigate the whirlwind of media attention and legal proceedings. Margaret, too, remained a constant presence, offering quiet support whenever Emily needed someone to lean on. Together, they formed an unlikely family bound by shared loss and resilience. One crisp morning, Emily stood at the edge of Greenfield Park, the fountain glistening in the sunlight. In her hands, she clutched the keychain, one last piece of her mother's courage. Beside her lay a bouquet of wildflowers, placed carefully near the base of the slide where the metal box had once been hidden. I miss you, Mommy, she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. But I promise, I'll keep fighting. For you, for my brother, and for everyone who deserves the truth. As she turned to leave, a familiar figure approached from across the park. It was Agent Monroe, her expression softer than usual. How are you holding up? She asked gently. Emily shrugged, managing a faint smile. I'm okay. It's just hard sometimes. Monroe nodded, crouching to meet her eye level. Your mom wasn't just brave, she was smart. She knew exactly how to protect you and your brother, even when she couldn't be here herself. That says something about the kind of person she was, and the kind of person you're becoming. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she blinked them away. Do you think she'd be proud? I know she would, Monroe replied firmly. And so am I. With that, the two walked back toward Claire and Margaret, who waited patiently near the park entrance. As they reached the group, Claire extended a hand to Emily. Ready to go home? Emily nodded, taking her hand. Yeah, let's go. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the group gathered in a cozy living room, a safe haven far removed from the chaos of recent weeks. On the coffee table sat a framed photograph of Rachel, smiling warmly with Emily and her baby brother. We did it, Ratch, Claire murmured, raising a glass in silent tribute. Your kids are safe, and your fight wasn't in vain. Emily curled up on the couch, clutching the keychain tightly. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of peace, not because the pain had disappeared, but because she knew her mother's love would always guide her. As the room fell quiet, Emily closed her eyes, imagining her mother's voice humming softly, a melody without words, yet filled with meaning. You're stronger than you realize, Rachel seemed to whisper, her presence lingering like a warm embrace. And in that moment, Emily believed it.